Welcome back, everyone. It's Dr. A from Art Appreciation for those of you who are my students. If you're watching this, hopefully you've seen the photography lecture first. I'm going to probably do that one live. Eventually I'll post it up. But it's still one of my favorite lectures to give in person. So I can't do it in person, so we'll be watching it over the Collaborative Ultra on our class meeting time. But today I'm going to film the lecture on film. So let's talk about that. The film camera was definitely a product. It was an outgrowth of still photography. And if you haven't heard this already from me, I did my degree in photography, one of my undergrad degrees, and so photography is my thing. I never really dabbled that much in film, but it is interesting because it does grow out of photography. So, there is a relationship. The person who really was if you will, I guess he was more of a scientist than a photographer, was Edward Muybridge. And Muybridge photographed one of his friend's horses to prove to him that the horse's feet, all four of them, do indeed leave the ground. And you can see that right here. All right, see that in this frame? Yes, they do. Absolutely. He was instrumental in creating this idea that they could capture movement by putting together a number of negatives and flipping them. We can see movement being created, and it's simply, like I said, a bunch of negatives. That's how I look at it as a photographer. For those of you who remember, I don't know if some of you do, remember those flip books from when you were a child and you would flip the pages and it always had a little horse? Well, it's attributed to this, this first image that really the idea was to illustrate motion. But the creation of film is attributed to Dixon and, of course, Edison. This is Thomas Edison in one of his laboratories. And for those of you who are interested in, history at all, he had a small lab over in Florida. It's near Fort Myers. So you can go over there and see he lived in he used to vacation here. He liked to fish and stuff. And he also was friends with Henry Ford, so Ford had a house next door to his. So the Edison Museum is an interesting thing to visit. But let's go on. The creation of, film was really pioneered by William Dixon. It's conceived by Edison, but developed by his collaborator, William Dixon. Unfortunately, Dixon didn't receive the credit for a long time, so finally he sued and got part of the patent and part of the credit for developing the very first motion picture camera, and that was between 1889 and 1892. It was in Edison's laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey, that they set up the very first film studio they called this little blacked out structure that they built the Black Mariah. And this was where the earliest films in the United States were done. It was a very short films that were being produced. They didn't have stories. And remember, they don't have sound. If you don't know that, I'm telling you, so I don't know if you remember. But what Dixon did and Edison was they developed this camera that could film things, no sound, of course, and then they married that with the idea of a short viewing camera called the kinetoscope. They're individual cameras. These are individual, and people would let me show you a person watching a kinetoscope, lean over and watch a short film. They were very, very short. Because could you imagine standing over like this for so long? It wouldn't work. I mean, obviously, you couldn't watch this for a couple hours. He exhibited the first 10 kinetoscopes in New York City. It was the very first commercial exhibition in 1895. And, oh, excuse me, it was 1894. The 1894, he introduces the kinetophone. Was a phonograph, so like a record player. All right, and their early films were really simple things. Like I said, there's no storyline. There may be a minute or two, and an example of one would be the one he did of Eugene Sandow, the strong man. And all it is, I'm going to put the link for it in the assignments for this week, and so I want you to watch it. It's a minute, maybe a minute and 30 seconds. Is Sandow, the first real true strong man in America, standing there flexing his muscles. It's not anything any of you would be interested in, but maybe I've seen a suggestion by a scholar that we've come full circle. YouTube, we can't watch anything that's too long. And so maybe these are interesting again. They just have no sound, but you get used to it. You should, always talkies were so innovative when they were first introduced. So I think that people forget that people had to deal with no sound before that. The real first, though, motion picture camera that showed something that we would kind of relate to was the Vitascope. Again, patented by Edison. You can see here, it's this is a actual advertisement for it in the New York Herald. April 24th, 1896, and you see here what people were introduced to. It was like watching a play, and I think they didn't know how to stage it, so it was set up like a play in a way, with this kind of frame that, simulated a piece of art. It was new. They don't, they're struggling to decide how to project this. Now remember, there's no sound. So we have down here in this right here, the orchestra. So if you were in a fancy movie theater, you would be watching a film and the sound would be with a band. That's why music is so critical. The soundtrack of music today a film today is still as critical. You guys all know that when you hear something like da 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 da, this really low bass, you're gonna hear, or the light gets dark. All these are cues that something bad's happening, and so it really is linked to music quite early on. In the early days of film with no sound, the true first person to become an universal movie star, there were other movie stars, but I'm talking about somebody recognized worldwide, was Chaplin. And also, I want you to watch a short clip from a Chaplin film, so I'll put that in your assignments as well. And Chaplin was the man. He was recognized around the world. He still really is today. I can still ask people, Charlie Chaplin, I see people wearing t-shirts still with his image on it. And this little character he created, the little tramp, you see the little hat here and the little mustache, all right? Some of my favorite sound films are Chaplin. He's really a genius. But sound by 1921 is going to be introduced, and the first full sound film is this one, and it's called The Jazz Singer, as you see here advertised. There's sound from the beginning to the end. Okay, and it's amazing. Now, was it popular? Well, it's not really going to be popular until it becomes easier to do. And then, that's one of the great innovations, and then color is introduced. The debate always being which one is the first color film. I don't know which one that is the first color film. A lot of people think it's Gone with the Wind, but in reality, it's The Wizard of Oz was the first color film. Gone with the Wind comes right after that. In fact, I did some research on it, and the man who was doing the filming with the color was the same person, actually. But Wizard of Oz is first, but Gone with the Wind is the first color film to win an Oscar. And so these are the early attempts at color. 1929, and then from there we have a very long gap before we get any kind of real innovation. It's a difficult medium. It's it's a lot of moving parts, and so you have a lot of experimentation and things going on. Special effects will be the next great innovation, although certainly in 1895, Alfred Clark, the director, tried to attempt that. So the idea was there. That didn't change. And he did this, the beheading of Mary Queen of Scots, and he did this kind of, showing her head, and then they cut, and then the next frame there's no head. It's not very believable, but it's going to be George Lucas who's the man for special effects. In 1977, George Lucas introduces Star Wars, and when he does that, he revolutionizes the ideas of special effects. Because Lucas's genius is he didn't make the entire thing about the special effects. I hate movies like that. I like film. I watch a lot of film, but I prefer if they enhance the film I'm watching. And then, of course, coming along next is CGI. And Jurassic Park is it. Now, if we were sitting in a class, I would show you some clips, especially this one, the clip with the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I always show this one, or I either showed this one. No, I usually do show this one. I'm just thinking what else I've shown. I think this is the one I'm kind of like been stuck on for a while because I think it's so good and my students still like it. So if you haven't seen it, I'll put the link in again. Watch this clip with Encounter, and it's 1993, and CGI becomes a part of filmmaking. Today, CGI is used more and more and more and more. Now with film, it was so innovative. People didn't know where we could go next, but the idea was that one day you could have film in your house. And so the next move is into television. 1800s to 1839, the idea was being discussed. I know that a lot of people didn't think that, this was that early, but it is. It's the ideas that are early. It's not the actual thing is invented, but certainly the idea. And Philo Farnsworth produced the first electronic television picture in 1927. This really catapulted America into the television age. Today, most Americans have more than one television. But look at the evolution of it, 1928. I mean, that's the screen. I don't know if you all can see it, but look at that. And then, of course, by the time we get to the flat screen, from this, I'm sure it didn't seem possible for most people. It was truly a revolutionary thing. I think that most people can't imagine living without a television. I always tell people, I remember this and this growing up. And for a long time, I didn't have a television. But I do like to stream, and so I stream all my TV. Like I said, I like to watch films. And I'm addicted to YouTube, just like you all are. I watch it a lot because there's some interesting stuff on there. The first televised Major League Baseball game was conducted in 1939, 1940. Okay, they began regular programming in 1939, and it was revolutionary. People are today just so addicted. I can't imagine some of the people I know going without. The question is, where do we go next? I've seen ones now, they unroll like a piece of canvas and you just put them on the wall. I've seen some amazing innovation in the technology, even since I've been alive. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. But just from this is the 40s and the 50s, TV becomes kind of a part of the American household. They're going to move on to bringing images into houses via computers. And then just think of what you guys have. You guys have the little screen you get to carry around with you and watch it. Your iPhone. I remember I went to a symposium before the iPhone was invented, and they told us that. I was in a think tank in Miami, and that we were going to be watching things on a phone. It was going to be a phone, a computer, and a camera all in one, and I just couldn't believe it. So now, look at where we're at. So where are we going next? it's going to really, you know, be an innovative thing. Let's see what happens next. But we're going to end the film lecture here. I hope that this was interesting for most of you, since you're so addicted to the medium of film, and especially now with computers coming out, generated out of that. But have a great day. Peace out, everyone.